Yeah, I think we are missing Debbie, who's going to still join us.
Yes, she's joining.
Okay. Thank you for joining, Daniela.
You're welcome.
Okay. I think some of us look a little bit too serious. I think we just have to get ourselves together a bit and enjoy the moment with great people. We have Dr. Singh here. We have Peter, Dr. Peter as well. We have Mr. Herman Greg, and we're waiting for Daniel. Okay, Daniel will just Debbie has to call it that way. Will just join us as well. Thank you everyone for joining. Today we have our ethical issues panel debate or talk show that we have under the Smile project. So I would like to give the honor to Regine as, let me say, the president of AMAM NGO, for giving her the next word to Gabriela to just give us some few welcome speech, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Levi. Thank you. So, hello everyone, and let me give you my warmest welcome to all of you who have accepted to be part of this panel about ethics on social media. My name is. Sorry.
That's better.
Oh, okay. Can I continue?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can see you now.
Oh, okay. Good. So my name is Regine Nginipsaila from African Media Association Malta. And so about this panel, as you all know, our labs evolves now on social media, and content produced there is of people from all walks of life. People using either personal blogs, people using their names or their bodies, or even both. The aim for them is to pass to their followers messages that most of the time lack consistency. We also have on social media good content producers, professional writers, professional journalists, experts, people who are knowledgeable about specific topics and who also produce content. And so as we are all swimming into the waters of social media, it is easy to realize that ethics is not the most used virtue. What is ethics? I'm sure that our very experienced panelists will tell us all that we need to know about it. As for me, I want to share what has been on the news recently, the outbreak of monkeypox in Europe. Immediately in the UK, in the US, in Belgium, in Malta, across Europe, pictures of Black people suffering from monkeypox spreads, published by bloggers, but also by important media outlets and subsequently shared on social media. Note that the outbreak was in Europe, not in Africa. People who caught the disease in Europe were white people, and pictures of white people suffering from monkeypox are available. This project brings up such interesting and challenging topics. And the panel today will be moderated by Mr. Levi Lishkon that welcomed you a while ago on behalf of African Media, and by Mrs. Maria Gabriela Dobelzin on behalf of Naomi International Malta. But Maria Gabriela Dobelzin is the person that I safely call the brain behind this project, and I am happy to introduce her. Over to you, Gabriela.
Thank you so very much, Regine. Actually, the project came about while I was studying, while I was reading for my master's degree in transcultural counseling, where I was introduced to Chimamanda's work, as a matter of fact, and I felt it is so important that we need to become aware what are incomplete stories, what is behind that, what does it cause, and what effects does it have, not only on the individual, but on the society at large, and also on the system of the society. So here we are today with our last panel of this project. I mean, the project will run until next year with several active hands-on community engagement activities. But today we will focus on ethical issues in social media and blogging, what Regine has kindly said. And I am really honored to have very good panelists and that you join us. Let me start introducing you to Judge Singh. Judge Singh, thank you for giving us the great honor to join us from Swansea, from Wales, one of my favorite parts in the UK. Judge Singh was the first ethnic minority judge in Wales. He was appointed Deputy District Judge at the Merthyr Tydfil. Sorry, correct me if I say
Yes,
this wrong.
you are correct. Merthyr Tydfil.
Merthyr Tydfil combined law courts of the Wales Circuit. He served on the Wales Advisory Committee on Drug and Alcohol Misuse, the Family Court Services Committee, the National Assembly Advisory Group, and the South and Southwest Wales Criminal Justice Liaison Committee. Judge Singh was former commissioner for the racial equality and is commissioner for the Race Council right now. He's actually the chair of the Race Council. And he has a long list and an enormous achievement to score. For example, between the years 2000 and 2009, Judge Singh chaired the formal investigation into the prison service and which produced the 2000 and 2009 Zahid Mubarak and racial equality in prisons reports, which caused quite which called quite for a movement. Then Judge Singh is also a member of the Bar Race Relations Committee and the Child Support Appeals Tribunal, where his heart is with the children, as a matter of fact. And he also chairs the Welsh government's complaints panel. And in 2010, for all his efforts, Judge Singh was appointed as chair of the Welsh Race Council, and he was awarded the Commander of the British Empire for all your wonderful achievements, Judge Singh. And I really feel honored to share the advisory panel with you for Naomi UK. So we are blessed to have you.
Thank you.
Then Dr. Carla Camilleri. She is Assistant Director and Legal Advisor, a legal officer, sorry, Carla, at Aditus Foundation, a non-profit that monitors acts and reports on human rights in Malta. She also teaches law students in the European area of freedom, security, and justice law at the University of Malta. Dr. Camilleri advocates for migration, integration, anti-discrimination, and LGBT rights at Aditus Foundation. Carla has published several reports, including A Way Forward for the National Integration Policy in Malta, and a report on national integration policies in Malta. She also worked with Neil Falzon on the MGRM's position paper on marriage equality, advocating the best options of legislating for same-sex couples and families in Malta. Carla also wrote about sexual orientation discrimination for the European Documentation and Research Center project Anti-Discrimination, Inclusion and Equality in Malta. Dr. Camilleri also provides legal pro bono services, information to clients in areas such as migration and asylum, LGBT rights, anti-discrimination, and workplace rights. Carla, it is a pleasure, and I feel honored that you joined us. Thank you so very much. I had the honor to meet Dr. Camilleri at the Turning Tables conference, and it was a pleasure talking to you then. Herman Greg, our 5 times National Journalism Awardee, award winner. He devised and produced the debate show Times Talk and routinely contributes to media titans such as BBC World, DPA, and The Economist. Herman began working as a journalist for the Times of Malta in 1997. So prior to being named editor-in-chief of Malta's largest news organization, he served as deputy editor of the Sunday Times, head of media and online editor. For the past 25 years, he has served as deputy editor, head of media and online editor. So I feel that no one is more well-versed and experienced in that subject than Herman. So I thank you once again for really joining us and supporting us with this project. Herman has spent the past 18 years analyzing the migration question and writing about the danger of right-wing speech, which is very dear to my heart, coming from Germany, so being born in post-war Germany. So I share that. In addition to being a theater director, he is also the author and producer of the play Determinated. And Herman has been a vocal advocate for integration and the need for media literacy and critical thinking. He also is the other director, scriptwriter, and the most recent of which he wrote They Blew Her Up, a play which is near and touches all of us. A play focusing on Daphne Caruana Galizia's assassination. Thank you, Herman, for giving us the honor. Debbie.
Pleasure.
Debbie Bolanle, I had the pleasure to meet and to join her church community, has been born and raised in Nigeria. She is living in Malta since 2000 and is working as a Pentecostal pastor for a community consisting mostly of African people. So Debbie is doing a marvelous job with the African community here in Malta. Her interest is on cultural generated gender issues and helping the members of her community deal with social and cultural disparities between older and younger generations of her community that can lead to conflict and adaptation issues. Debbie also works in close collaboration with NGOs such as African Media Association, who are working also with asylum seekers and refugees. Thank you, Debbie, for taking the time to join us.
You're welcome.
We also have Dr. Klaus-Peter Edinger. He is the pastor of the German community in Malta. And I'm really happy to have you with us. Dr. Edinger studied theology and at the Theological College in Bethel, in Bielefeld, and at the University of Heidelberg, one of Germany's most renowned universities. He did his PhD in missiology and religious studies. Dr. Edinger was born in 1952 in Germany and is married and a father of 3 adult children and a proud grandfather of 4 grandchildren. Dr. Klaus-Peter Edinger has served as a German pastor in different parishes in Protestant District Church at the Palatinate, dispatched by the Evangelic Church in Germany. For 6 years, he was pastor to Port Elizabeth, South Africa, to Zambia, where he operated under great risk. This 6 years he was as pastor and lecturer in Harare, in Zimbabwe. So, and at present, as I said, we have the pleasure to have Dr. Edinger as pastor among our communities. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let us move now to the opening question. I want to open this panel with the following question. What, from your personal as well as professional perspective, when you look at your personal experience and your professional experience and your understanding about the community at the moment, what do you think are the main ethical issues in social media and blogging, Judge Singh?
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for those kind words. And I'm humbled to be accompanied by such great people who have been so committed to eliminating racism generally. Social media, don't know about blogging. It is still much blogging, but certainly social media in many ways is an excellent way of getting vital information out across the world. And compare the information which was coming out during the World War I and II to the current brutality in Ukraine. And it's led to fundraising across the world to help the Ukrainians, providing homes for them, and encouraging people to be involved. However, it also brings out very important factor that racism is still so vibrant right across the world. And we have seen how racism raised its ugly head during the evacuation of people from Ukraine, that the Black people had to have another queue. Their getting out of the country was restricted. They were not priority. Black lives matter. And this is where the social media is so important to bring about. And the ethical issues there is that it is good in many ways until it is misused. And there we run into huge dilemma of whether social media is good or bad. We see the positive aspects in very briefly I mentioned, but then you have harassment of vulnerable people through social media, encouraging hate crime through social media, encouraging even suicide amongst young people through social media, spreading of misinformation, grooming young children, increase in radicalization of young people across the world. And the dilemma is the billionaires trying to have monopoly of social media, endeavoring to buy the platforms, such recently the Facebook and Twitter. And there the dilemmas are. I think that we live in a world where we welcome the social media. At the same time, I am very, very divided as far as the advantage and disadvantages are concerned. And that's my opening statement on that, Maria.
Thank you so very much for your very far-reaching opening statement, which, to address all the points, would be unfortunately exceeding, but we need to address them. We need to start to address them. Herman, when you hear what Judge Singh just voiced, from your perspective, from the media perspective, and from also your personal perspective, because you dedicate part of your life on social justice and on ethics in media.
Yes, I mean, look, like Judge Singh, I'm actually a big fan of social media. I think it's got so many positives. We don't understand sometimes how it aids, communication. It can help us in so many ways, establish contacts with old friends, people, maybe find jobs. There are so many things we can do, which is so beneficial about social media. And obviously blogging is a bit different, but maybe I think the focus is more on social media because I think it is much bigger these days. But of course, where it comes to social media then, and where it comes to my field and the news coverage, we're here talking about issues of, objectivity, impartiality, bias, if privacy, where do you draw the line as respecting someone's privacy, and ultimately what is in the public interest. And the public interest can be a bit hot potato. It can be very difficult to establish who is right and what is in the public interest. Is it what I decide? Is it what the public decides? And who is the public? Is it the people the trolls we find on Facebook, on Twitter? Or is it journalists who might think they have the right answer, but they don't? So in my books, I think it's about learning the basics of stereotyping, of decency, of, where's the limit to obscenity, and what limits to freedom of speech, because this is something we encounter on a daily basis. Where do we draw the line over what is acceptable in our discourse? Obviously, because ultimately we are dealing with a uncontrolled space, and it's a free for all for people to comment. Remember one thing: we are dealing here with platforms operated by social media giants like Facebook and Google, and these are massive companies that have no interest about protecting or promoting decency or freedom of speech. It's all about money, and you know what happens when your primary driver is money. And this is why we've ended up in this situation today, and this is why I think the world is going belly up, and this is where we need to start thinking about what are what is acceptable in our social media platforms. Do we understand that whatever we post in the public domain transcends our office, our living room, our bedrooms, that it is going in the public domain for people to consume, for people to use against yourself? So I think from the most important thing here is obviously we need some form of media literacy, because the media literacy can maybe help us understand how to control ourselves, how to be ethical on social media. But we all know this is not going to work like that. Maria, we're dealing in a situation where we love shouting at each other, where the most hateful comments are the ones that are given most exposure. And this is when birds of a feather are shouting in the same bubble, in the same Facebook bubble, it becomes very dangerous. So yes, where it comes to answer your question, it is about self-regulation, but I think there is also a role for the authorities to step in when we overstep that limit of decency. I'm beginning to wonder whether it is too late, or we're a bit too late to start. We created this monster and now we're having to regulate it later. So I think there comes a point where we're going to need to enter with the authorities, with possibly the courts, to try to establish what is acceptable and what isn't. And this is a subject which I'm sure we're going to be discussing this afternoon. That's it from me as an intro.
Thank you, Herman, for your very precious intro. Media literacy definitely is a topic, and media literacy not for the academic only, but also for the grassroots. And here we have to think, how do we listen? What package we are having when we listen? I mean, and that implies also the knowledge of critical thinking. So media literacy cannot go without critical thinking. Klaus-Peter Edinger, dear pastor, when you hear that from your perspective, from a community caring perspective of one of the minority communities in Malta, what comes to mind when you hear both church thing? What do you think are social or ethical issues in social media and blogging from your perspective and observations?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking me the question. I would like to compare the social media with water and fire. It can be a blessing, both can be a blessing and both can be a curse. Of course, I see the blessing as
You're
you
frozen.
mentioned, Gabriel, that I was in Southern Africa for quite a long time, and of course we have daily contact there, and specifically with Zimbabwe supporting hopefully change next year politically. So it's really a blessing to be in contact with so many people, and here in Malta we are also of course far from our friends and family in Germany. But on the other hand, it's a blessing. I talked about the blessing, it's also a curse. Just to give you an example, and you may know that, Gabriel, at the moment in Germany, there is a big scandal of children pornography and so on. Yeah, of course, it's almost impossible to stop that. And how many lives of young people, of kids, are destroyed on that, and it's almost impossible to stop that. So I see the two sides. It became important for me now in the 2 years of COVID, where we also as a church had to find new ways of communication. And we saw again the blessing that we, when it was not allowed even to meet on a Sunday service or to meet for a discussion group and so on, we could do it online as we are doing here via Zoom. It's a blessing, but we also saw very much the limitation. Yeah, it's a difference if you meet personally for a service, for example. So we have another pastor here to confirm that, and especially from an African context, you know, when we come together in Harare specifically, but also in South Africa. Of course, it's important to greet one another. When there is the peace greeting, people come and they hug each other. Now nothing was allowed anymore. People could not even come to the front, to the altar and meet there. Yeah, I see very much the limitation through the social media. On the other side, it gives people who can't attend, for example, a meeting or a service, they can join via the media. On the ethical side, I think it's very important, as it was already mentioned earlier on, that we need some ethical rules and regulations. I mean, our life, sometimes we complain that we have too many rules and regulations, but what is a life? What is social life without any rules and regulations? At least I would say, where we can agree, if we are Christians or not, what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, that we do to others as we expect they do to us. Yeah, and in the internet, in social media, of course, you can hurt, you can harm other people, and it is without consequences. I think that is a great pity, and I think we suffer. There are so few rules and regulations that one can destroy the dignity of other people and it does not have negative consequences. We, especially from the Christian point of view, I think that we take that we on the side of those who are vulnerable. Yeah, but here how can we do that in the social media? So it's very much limited. Yeah, as I said, a blessing and a curse at the same time, and sometimes I'm really suffering from the curse side.
Thank you, Klaus Peter, for your input. Debbie, how do you experience ethical issues in social media and blogging from your personal as well as from your professional perspective, in your job as a pastor, but also as an African woman and living in Malta and with your communities? Can you share that a little bit?
Oh, thank you, Maria. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And I want to say good afternoon to everyone on the platform. Basically, like you said, I'm going to go a bit from the pastoral view of it because my other pastor has said something, but we forgot to mention that I'm a qualified nurse as well. So that is even my main job. So I have the pastoral part of it as like a part-time. So I would love, because a lot of it have been mentioned by our professionals on the platform already. We know that social media, it's a blessing. It's a sort of whereby you get informations needed at hand. You can stay in the corner of your room and you get informations across the world. You can even pass information. That is the positive side of it. When it comes to the ethics, I'm going to speak from the professionalism part of it. I see that the dignity and the respect is out of it. I could remember gone are the days. I've been working as a nurse. I've been qualified for like almost 15 years. So the timing is not that long compared to someone maybe 30, 35 years ago. But I can see the difference between then when I was qualified as a nurse, the dignity and the respect you get from your client to now. Why? Because people have access to their health information online. What you need to know, you just with a tap of your finger, you know all about your problems, your health issues, what are the things you can do. So even if you have a client going to visit a doctor, let me say, already he or she has all the information in his or her brain. So he's just waiting for that medical practitioner to make a mistake. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, because he will tell you, sorry, no, I didn't read that online. So you see, that means it has come, social media has turned to a sort of causing a dilemma between the professionals and the client. So, and I'm sure this has nothing only to do with the health, maybe other professionals, whereby you have a psychologist, whereby you have maybe physiotherapists, all other professionals. So these, I see the expansion, the initiative that people are getting from social media has caused a lot of disrespect to to people that are called professionals. Even at the universities, sorry, I'm going to that level. You have professors, they want to teach their students, which is okay. I remember growing up in Africa, we depend a lot on our professors. They are our gods. But nowadays, with just a tap on your laptop or wherever, you can search through all the topic you want, even better than what your professor will tell you or your teacher will tell you in class. So people tend to look down and they don't even feel like, oh, I don't really need to like depend on this profession, these professors anymore. And I'm quickly going to say maybe people see it, another ethical issues is the privacy, the trust, the honesty. Are people being honest about what we put out? And what you sell is people are buying it. And it has been said by Dr. Singh initially, a lot of people, and Hubert as well, if I'm spelling it correctly, a lot of people, they put jargons online just to make money. And people are buying those jargons just to say like, I want to try it. They don't care how it's going to end people's life. They don't care the negativity that comes from it. They just want to sell it, and so that people can buy. So I think that is one of the main problem that the social media is causing at this moment in time. It has turned to money-making means. For example, I'm going to end it with this. I've seen a lot of Africans, which is good because it exposes them, and I love that. I come from Nigeria, like I said, when I see so many things that a lot of Nigerians are putting online, on YouTube, to be precise, I'm like, wow. But are those the reality? Is there any honesty in it? And is there any trust as well? And privacy. So those are the three things I'm going to bring out from my experience being a nurse and even the normal life belief. And as an African woman, that one I don't even want to go into it because Dr. Sin already said it. A lot of things you see coming out on social media that portrays African and which are not true. But that has been even in the time when there were no social media. And that has always been the case of jargons being put out there, you see, and then you believe it and you feel like somebody once asked me, and it's just a joke, so maybe people can laugh to this. She said, where do you live in Africa? Do you live on trees? And I'm like, wow, we don't live on trees. We have buildings like the European people have buildings. But I thought like, yes, she had the right to ask the questions because most of the things she's seen are bushes, animals. And, so that is what comes on social media. That's another effect of things that are being put in social media. And I'm going to end it with this. I believe that there should be some kind of a standard that needs to be put on social media, regulations, whereby even though it's something that comes out, you can access it, but it shouldn't be that free that it will cause damage. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Debbie. I would like now to hand over the word to our chair of this afternoon, to my colleague, Livy Chigong, to carry on with the second question we have to you. Livy, come in, please.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the great insights that you guys have been given on the first question. Our second question goes as, due to your professional experience and educational know-how, what are the most significant consequences of the ethical issue? What are the most significant consequences of the ethical issue? At this level, I'll start in a different order. I'll go with Herman Gretsch first, and then I'll give the honor to the judge as the last person to cement everything of this question there. So I'll start with Herman first to give us his opinion on these, please.
Well, I mean, I think the consequences of what's happening on social media, and especially when we breach the most basic ethical issues, are for us to see on a daily basis. Just open the news and you see how many stories, how many problems in this world are actually sourced from something which was said or shared on social media. We're seeing too much cyberbullying, I would say. We're seeing too much social anxiety, especially among young people. This is something I come across alarmingly in the last few years, especially among young people. The social anxiety of young people feeling that they are not up to a certain standards established by I don't know who. And that is a big problem we're finding, especially post-COVID. It's quite incredible, the damage that's done. We're seeing problems of depression sparked again, very simply by youngsters who feel their picture or their latest post hasn't been liked enough on Facebook. And I find it quite alarming that we're actually dealing with these issues. Then, of course, we're talking about exposure to indecent content. The daily recipe of racism and xenophobia, if I can talk about my own country here, which is leading to so many problems out there in society, normally fueled by people who are misinformed at best, inherently hateful at worst. And so what we're ending up doing is that when you have these people, gathering, occupying the same space, you end up with worldwide disasters like Donald Trump. And because I think Trump is quite possibly the starkest illustration of what happens when we end up in a situation where society is rewired to a particular narrative where it doesn't think logically anymore. And the US president, considered by many to be the most important politician in the world, ends up being somebody who preaches hate in my books. So social networks basically end up feeding off each other, and you end up like this. So we are talking about significant consequences here. Where we tend to, unless going back to our original argument over what we can do to educate ourselves, and we need to really go back to basics here. I see Mina's put on a question over, I think it's an important question, who is going to regulate the media literacy?
Yeah, I want to bring that up.
Yeah, it's a very important question. And I don't really have an answer, but I think it should be, first of all, we start from the premise of learning the basics of respect. It's an old-fashioned word, and of values that we don't even, consider. We're not taught basic respect at school. Youngsters are basically taught to pass exams and all that, but we are not taught the basics of of the way we should behave, about respecting your neighbor. And it's something I think we need to start off from. And then who is going to regulate the media literacy? I would like to see maybe a group of experts who really believe in basics, not maybe politicians who are bent on populism. Instead, I'd like to see well-meaning educators, maybe media professionals, NGOs. And I think it's very important that we get cracking and talk about these things, because the consequences of what we're seeing is a daily recipe of hate, animosity. I mean, I find it myself here editing this news organization. I mean, the hatred that comes our way is quite remarkable. I mean, we've ended up in a situation where, forget the fact that we, as journalists, we learn how to grow a thick skin, they tell us. But the hatred towards the migrant population, by migrant here, I need to underline especially the Africans, Muslim religion, the ones that are normally really discriminated against. Because of the misinformation that we're seeing, I have ended up in a situation where I had to revise our own comments policy to stories that talk about migration. Because when I did a simple exercise one day, I realized that 70% of the comments being submitted in reaction to migration stories were outright hate or misinformed. And do I want to play a part in this ugly game? And I had to do something I never thought I'd be doing. Stopped comments to all online comments but still the stories are being shared on Facebook. People are there, and it's a hodgepodge of misinformation, which is leading to some very dangerous situations. So I'll stop there for the time being.
Thank you very much for your insight. I think you brought out some very great point. So I'll do it this way. I have to go to Dr. Kala Kamilari. I think I'll give you the honor to answer two questions. I think I'm doing it this way because you are really working with migrants and you have a good insight on the things that are happening both on the ethical side and the reality. So I think I'll give you the opportunity to answer on both questions. The first question, which is the main ethical issue on blogging, and then you also answer on the second question, which is what are the most significant consequences. So please, can you take the time and then give us some words on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the first point, of course, when we talk about the ethics of social media and blogging, I think one of the most positives, I mean, we've already mentioned this, it's one of the most positive things about social media and blogging, obviously, is kind of the democratic potential of it, freedom that people can access information relatively easily, freely, if they have Wi-Fi and access to the internet. And there's a kind of very instantaneous exchange of ideas and information, which is obviously crucial in a democracy, that you have access to information. And that is relatively transparent. Of course, the big negative or the big plus is kind of balancing the information or the opinions with obviously the protection against hate speech, against stereotyping, against the single story. So, for example, as a magistrate said in a recent case in Malta, a hate speech case, opinion is free, but it is not absolute. So you have the right to an opinion, but there are also regulations and laws and ethics that do not make the right to free speech absolute. There's always a context within which the speech should be regulated. Malta was found to have the highest rate of online hate speech in Europe in a survey, in a Eurobarometer survey carried out in 2018, which I didn't find particularly surprising, because if I had to link it with the lack maybe of media literacy and the kind of lack or misinformation or control of the narrative when it comes to migration, over here we tend to have quite a strong narrative from the people in power and the authorities of a certain type of discourse. So residents, at least in Malta, are constantly faced with a narrative, a negative narrative from the big power structures. So the people who control the narrative, such as politicians, such as people with very strong voices in Malta. So I wanted to link this this kind of phenomena that we have in Malta to also this problem that we see in our work on the kind of repeated misinformation that is coming out from people in power, basically, without any consequence, and at times also very dangerous language that is being used and is not controlled. So obviously the person, the normal person, the citizen at home or the resident at home is constantly listening to this mantra, to the single story, and that becomes the reality. And I think it is very dangerous that there is no, that we find no consequences to these forms of speech online, which could. There have been, we've been seeing kind of development of academic writing on hate speech, which even, as Herman mentioned, Donald Trump, which even points to a possibility that repeated severe forms of misinformation kind of can step over to hate speech and inciting, violence and racial hatred. So I think that is my first take. So I wanted to speak to the power structures in the country and point to them, or put them in the spotlight to a certain extent. And when it comes to controlling, or who would be the controllers of the ethics or media ethics, I think I totally agree with what Herman said. So it should be, there could be a sort of a media literacy education, self-regulation structure. And I mean, more and more we're seeing, especially in Malta, that the courts are taking a bit more of an active role. Which, I mean, when I say a bit more of an active role, we're saying 4 cases as opposed to 0, say maybe 3 years ago. And, there were some recent judgments. There was a kind of a judgment from the Court of Appeal, which now the lower courts are seeming to follow, which I find a bit of kind of a positive step forward. But obviously there are many problems that we see as a whole structural problem, especially when it comes to racism and xenophobia. I don't know if you want me to carry on, but I do have, certain, I kind of pinpointed certain real problematic areas that we come across. So for example, the narrative of the influx of the invasion, the narrative, say that the economy minister, tried to talk about during COVID, that foreigners, if they lose their jobs, should go back home without any consequence. AFM press release is saying that NGOs are lying when boats are in distress at sea. So kind of things that you don't expect to be said by people in certain powerful roles. For example, we had a CEO of the social welfare agency commenting on social media that NGO ships should be sunk, and this person still retains his job to this day. We also see, for example, examples of speech which you do in judgments as well in court, which you do not expect to see in a court of law, which should be blind to, justice is blind. Everyone should be treated equally in the eyes of the law. But, you have speeches like, if there's a case which involves migrants, you found the line that in Malta, we use the rule of law, not the rule of the jungle. And particular wording that is used in court quite often. We also had a project which looked at the role of the media and the presumption of innocence, for example, for perpetrators of crime. And we did find that one of the biggest findings was that the nationality or the ethnicity or the religion of the perpetrator was pretty much a focus of the descriptor of the assailant or the suspect, a Serbian man. Or a Russian with Maltese citizenship, kind of using that caveat, whereas if the perpetrator was Maltese, the nationality wasn't mentioned. Also using certain imagery on the media, of perpetrators, or there was one particular case where there was a riot, or if I would use a different word, I would use protest, where there was a protest in detention, and a group of migrants were taken to court through the front door, handcuffed, cable tied together, some of them not wearing shoes. And this was broadcast all over the media. Besides the kind of questionable actions of the police in kind of perpetrating these stories, I think the way that the media sometimes portrays these stories can affect the discourse quite heavily, especially since there's the background narrative of the invasion, which is never counteract or rarely counteract with positive stories of migrants in a multifaceted way, not just as a migrant, but as people with different different characterizations.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kala, for your insight. I know you still have a lot to give us and to share with us today, but due to time management, we'll try to proceed so that we make it on time. So we'll proceed with the next person. I think I'll ask our Sister Debbie to give her own insight on this topic to your experience. What are the most significant consequences? I think there are quite a few of them. So if you just help us with some insight on that, then we can proceed to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Basically, most of it has been mentioned, especially by Dr. Carla. I was going to go into sort of racial abuse, discriminations and stuff. So without repeating myself, but I'm just going to go over about oversharing. Those are the consequences, because sometimes when things are being overshared on social media, it leads to damage of users' reputation. So basically, things are being put out there. People put when they wake up, when they are from the start of waking up till when they're going back to their bed late at night. So it's like some people put out their lifestyle. There was a time I remember, Regine can remember, there was a sort of, I think you were even there, as well. There was some kind of case we had, especially within the African communities, whereby an immigrant traveling all the way from Africa down to Europe, and the kind of lifestyle they put on social media, extravagant lifestyle, whereby someone is wearing a designer watch, whereby someone is wearing, with all these extravagant life, whereas they are putting out a different picture of how people live in Europe. So basically, Africans wants to find every means of crossing over to Europe. So we can see that kind of message, because they believe life is better off in Europe, because maybe you have a family friend or a brother that just traveled within a year, and he is putting on social media this, whereby he's eating different kinds of food, whereas he couldn't afford it back in Africa, whereby he's having some Rolex, this kind of social media paparazzi, I call it. And that is oversharing. And that leads to people wanted to cross over to Europe, whereby we have that is contributing rather to illegal immigrants trying to come to Europe. So that was one of the things we discussed that day. And this is another thing to read. And people are even asking for money back in Africa because they believe you are doing well. So you need to foot my bills. You need to pay for my education. You need to do a lot of things. Whereas these people are not really living fine in Europe, but they just want the world to see the fake life they live. Sometimes I use this kind of term. I used to tell people, money don't grow on trees in Africa, in Europe. We have to work for money. They are not on trees whereby you have to go and pluck them from trees. So because the way people demand from you, it's just for the simple fact of oversharing what people put on social media. And that is giving wrong information about how you live in Europe. So another thing, the consequence, I've said it when I was talking about the ethical issue, is everyone becoming a master and professionals in their own way without a certificate. That's how I'm going to see. You become a professional, you become a professor, you become a master, or without a certificate. What do I mean by that? You have a lot of people, they can put out, you don't even need to go to school to study. You know how to put to upload a lot of things. You have some jargons you can put out there. You have some lifestyle, they call some people lifestyle bloggers, whereby they put a lot of things out. So people are just masters. They advise. You see a lot of people that come online and they will tell you, we are psychologists. You never, when you go on their site to listen to what they're saying, you will never ask them for their certificates. Never. You just click on their site that has been posted, and what you need to do is just to listen to them, either good or bad. So these are masters and professionals in their own way, because that is what we see them on social media, whereas we don't know if they are fake or they are real. And another consequence is addiction. Addiction leading to being possessive. That is what I'm going to say, because when you are addicted, some people can't do without having go on social media. So they are addicted to it and they are being possessed by it. That is why we see a lot of kids. And my fear nowadays is the teenagers. These affect a lot of the teenagers, whereby we see on the news in America, we see what just happened. 18 years, 20 years, going on sporadic gun shooting. And I think they learned from somewhere. They must have seen something. They must have had a mentor or someone on social media whereby they've been. And one thing in common, one thing that I always see in common when you listen to news and when you see their stories, there is this social media link to whatever they're doing. It's always start from the social media. It's like, oh, they've been on Facebook, they're trying to post some things, or maybe they've been watching something. When they are being arrested, they go into the first thing the police will do is to go into their devices. And there is something that links them to the plan that they have been planning this evil act for a while. And this is still social media of a thing. So those are the the significant consequences that I can really speak about right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think you really hit the hit nail on the head. I think for some of us, or like me, who's an African, I think I do understand quite a lot on what she was referring to, which I concur to some of that, and I accept that. I think Dr. Singh is going to be the last person, because I know it seems like he has a lot to say, but I want to give Dr. Peter the opportunity to talk on this. Doctor, I'm sorry, but let me just give you the last thing, because I think you have a lot to say on this. So Dr. Peter Edinga, please can you take on the floor to speak, please? Your mic is muted, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Is that me calling?
Please, I mean Dr. Peter first before you.
All right.
Yeah, sorry. Now I hope you will hear me. I think a lot has to be said, and a lot was said already. I would just refer to what Herman said earlier on. And as far as I remember, he talked of respect, and he said, yeah, it's some kind of old-fashioned word. But I think without respect to each other, how can we survive? How can we communicate? And how can we live together? What does it mean to respect somebody? I mean, I'm also very happy that I had this experience and lived in Africa, in Southern Africa. There I learned what respect means. Imagine the ways how people greet each other, especially when they're older and the younger generation. So respect plays a much bigger role than in our society, as I say it as a German. And I would even go further, say, I mean, in the New Testament we have the double commandment of love, where it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself, which means to give the neighbor, your fellow being, the same respect as you want to be respected. I think that is of such importance. And in the internet, as I mentioned earlier, you can do harm to other people. You violate them. You spread hatred and so on, and it's without consequences. Of course, we cannot force it, but I think we must find ways how we treat each other in more respect, especially when there are people we don't know. One of my important issues in South Africa, and I was there in 1994, when we arrived in 1993, it was just before the first democratic elections. And many Europeans who were there, they asked us, how can you come with 3 children now to South Africa, whereas all the whites who are able to leave the country will leave it because there will be a civil war. But for me, it was so important, and I just would like to share that with you. One of my first duties and tasks was to find contact to congregations, let's say of African congregations. We were still very much separated. And I learned we can only change it when we meet personally. We meet as churches, but we also met in private houses and institute of people. And unfortunately, I fear in social media, it's very difficult. It cannot replace inviting some people, some friends in the evening and have an evening together, talk together, eating and drinking together. And I know that in the African context, it plays a big role to sit together and to share a meal, and even to eat, to celebrate and to sing and perhaps to dance. I miss that in the media, and I think it's quite restricted that we cannot do it there. The other thing is, and that makes me really shivering, is when I saw, and it was also mentioned, but I want to underline it, that even in our democratic society, with all the weaknesses, it can be done damage through the social media, that even elections can be influenced by the media, and those who are the strongest, they can send their bots and can give information, fake information, as much as they want. And others, the weak ones who have just a connection, who can just go into the internet, of course they can't do it at all. So it's a question also, and I mentioned that earlier on, that we are on the side of those who are vulnerable, who are weak, who cannot defend themselves. But where do we have the rules and regulations in the internet that this is done? Who will do it? I mean, we had already, if you remember, 500 years ago, when the printing press was invented, that was of a similar revolution as it is now. That changed the whole, the whole society, the way to give information and so on. But at least I think we found ways, or the people found ways, and even states and governments found ways that it's in a way that can be accepted and that not other people are violated. Of course, it also happens, but in the internet it's much more. And we must also find rules and regulations that we treat each other in a way that people are not as much violated as they are now. But I'm still questioning who will really do that. Not Google and not Facebook. They are not interested, it was mentioned, but who can really do it? And who can limit the hatred speech and only do that?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Peter. Okay, so now we are okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Peter. So I'll have the honor to give you to our Judge Wei Singh to give us his own opinion and thought on this, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Most of it has been said, but I don't want to be sounding as if I'm pro-social media, full stop. But message, as other speakers have said, you speak in a corner of a room and you'll go right across the world. What's the consequences? Looking at the positive side, Black people were victims of police brutality for generations in America and other parts, but America in particular. Politicians failed to expose that, but social media exposed that to such an extent that one significant consequence of that was Black Lives Matters evolved. And that movement led to the like-thinking people right across the world moving on to do that. And it led to, and I talk from small country, one significant change here in Wales. Despite the COVID-19, it spread right across the world and particular changes came about. Here in Wales, to evolution of non-racist Wales, promoted by government. Zero tolerance to racism, promoted by Race Equality Council. And Race Equality Action Plan, promoted by Government of Wales, and spreading across the country. Persuading people sitting on the fence was difficult, but social media exposed these, and the significant consequence was that they came off the fence and joined those who have been preaching the obvious that Black, Asians, minority ethnic people are discriminated right across. So that's the good, significant consequence which one ought to bear in mind. But as I have already said, there are so many other aspects which all the other speakers have touched upon, which in fact is far from acceptable consequence of social media. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the judge, for that, and thank you everyone for insightful questions. I think it was quite educative, and having the consequences of this is going to be something that we really need as a whole. Just to make a sentence, I think we are going to have questions being asked at the end of the panel session. So please, when we ask the last question, then we're going to open the floor for everyone to pose their questions if they have any. So we are sorry for that, but there will be a time where we'll ask everyone to pose questions to the panelists and to anyone who needs some answers. Okay, thank you. So at this moment, I'll pass it over to Gabby to give us, to ask the last question of our panel, to our panelists, please. Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you, Libby. As Judge already mentioned an example how zero tolerance has been adopted with the Welsh government to promote social equality and fight against racism and social exclusion. I would like to place the first question to Dr. Camilleri, Carla Camilleri. Sorry, I left you out the last time, but I think you had an opportunity to link question 1 to question 2, which was brilliant. And you brilliantly outlined it and gave so much information to us. Carla, what do you think from your perspective, from your legal person, but also as a person, what solutions would you propose on what we have just discussed right now?
I think that there could be multiple solutions. So I don't think there's one size fits all solution. Of course, as I mentioned before, I would like to see a commitment to anti-racism speech within Parliament from both sides, or all three sides, or within political discourse, not to use migration as a populist kind of election pull factor. I would like to see maybe more training and awareness in the police force for them to be aware of what hate speech is and to prosecute, or to start prosecutions. Of course, and we also know of police officers, or we know what happened with Lassane's sister, who was both of them were off-duty, AFM officers, that there'd be a serious commitment within the ranks of both institutions to address racism, which unfortunately seems to be present in some of these institutions. So I think that the public needs to be there needs to be a lead by example matter to kind of attack or racism head on, even from the highest institutions. With prosecutions and with courts, and with courts taking hate speech seriously, I think there could be a kind of change within the population that you are accountable to what you write. So you're accountable. You have opinions, but you are accountable to these opinions. And I think lastly, and we've mentioned it, but I think there really needs to be some, proper media literacy and education from schools, but from the beginning, so from junior schools. There needs to be a national curriculum that has media literacy, responsibility, what racism is, what stereotyping means, even across the board, gender issues within the school curriculum. And also, teaching young people that they are also accountable for what they post, whether it is hate speech or whether it is personal content that would eventually, come back in their lives when they're older.
Thank you. These are very practical solutions or practical suggestions that could be easily implemented if everybody would be on board.
You know, and also, you know, and I say from what we can do as NGOs or as civil society, and what we should try and do is what we try to do as well is kind of counter the single story narrative. So, you know, talk about migration in different ways, about migrants in different ways, not just as migrants, but as people who contribute to society in different forms. So I think.
Thank you, Carla. We are working on that. Actually, we have, following this, we will have story cafes, 8 storied cafes where we address single story narratives within the communities. So this is one thing, and this is also something that will go on beyond this project. So there will be a life after the project where we'll try to work with Naomi and is try to work on that. Debbie, when you heard the thoughts of Carla presenting, what, from your perspective, would be the solutions? What solutions would you propose from your end?
Oh, well, thank you, Maria. I mean, there are quite the only. I'm not going to say the only solution. The main solution, and which the question has been asked, is who is going to, is the regulation, but who is going to do that? So that is, by the way, that is on the side. But I think I'm agreeing with Dr. Carla, especially when it comes to, I don't really want to mention racism on this platform at all, because I you know, you notice I did not even go into that at all. So, because I've lived in Malta for 21 years, so I know what, and Dr. Carla was one of, the organization was an organization that helped me to get my citizenship. I think maybe you still remember Bosedi Bolanle, because I'm with my sister, yeah. So basically, it's if there should be, people should be aware, especially in Malta, there is this low level of literacy that people don't understand the what's it called? What's what I'm looking for? The extent, the use of your word, your body language, and all sorts. When the people needs to be aware that you cannot just be a bully. You cannot just be rude to somebody because he or she is a migrant. So a lot of things, when I go on social media, thank God you don't see me doing that. Maybe because I'm a Christian, too, because being a Christian, you always want to preach peace, you understand? So when I see some comment on the platform, I feel like, you know, you have that anger, that thing within you that wants to make a reply in a rude manner, you know, especially when people are being generalized. So I think what can happen is there is a way, especially in Malta, whereby there should be a regulatory bodies. Number one, Dr. Carla already said, whereby police are being taught or trained about, to an extent of how people can be an abusive words or this kind of racist. This, I'm not talking about colors now. I'm not talking about being black or white or whatever. But once in Malta, what the norms in Malta is, once you are a foreigner, a migrant, either you're white or black or whatever, you are a foreigner. Even Maltese citizens born abroad. I've witnessed that when I was schooling. I have a Maltese citizen, Maltese, but born in Australia. So she decided to come back to Malta to come and start living with her grandparents. Do you know she was being treated as a foreigner as well, because she's typically like an English-speaking person? So that's, so I don't want us to see like, oh, maybe it's the color. No, it's not the color. It's being generalized. So I believe there should be some kind of regulatory bodies that can caution people to an extent where you can use some abusive word, where you can comment on social media. And like I said, access, so we can limit access to some kind of websites whereby if you don't belong to that site, you have to register. You know, what I've learned in life, when people start to pay, when things are not free, there are regulations, there are limits to how you can. So maybe some of these websites can be monetary. Like, what do I mean by that? Let's say like your organization, it's free, but if you are not a member, so if you just want to join in and you know, maybe you just have to pay, even if €1 to be a member of that group, then you know that there are people that are regulating this and you can be stopped at any point in time. And I love that for YouTube. As far as YouTube is free, you can be a YouTube user. You can have an account with YouTube, but there are some words that are not allowed on YouTube. Once you do that, you are being taken out automatically, or that word will not come up automatically, despite being it's free. People can access it. So that's the kind of thing I'm trying to say. And then confidentiality. I don't know how that can be done, but there are some ways we can limit things. We can't just say because social media is free, everybody can access it, but there should be some limitations, some kind of monetary, what was the word I'm looking for? Some kind of monetary things that can be attributed to it, whereby people don't just see it as free and then we abuse it and then we can use it anyhow we want. We can use it to torment people. We can use it to destroy people's mentally, psychologically, and all sorts of things like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. Again, some very good ideas. We appreciate to collect ideas from different perspectives. Herman, when you listen to the suggestions proposed so far, what comes to your mind? What solutions would you propose?
Look, let me be honest with you. We are here in a bubble. We're all like-minded people, I'd like to think, and we are talking to each other. And one of the biggest problems I find normally is that we don't tend to speak out publicly. We stick to our bubbles. And when we see something wrong happening in the street, in our local market, online, we stay quiet. You know, it kills me. It kills me the fact that people we're just very scared to react in public, because of course there is strength in numbers and the bad people outnumber the good people who are prepared to speak up, we think. What we don't realize is that all it takes is one of us to speak out publicly against that asshole, that bastard, talking racism, talking all sorts of rubbish, you know, being hateful on social media. And it takes just one of us to speak out and say, this is wrong, and let me tell you why this is wrong. And it really kills me that time and time again, I have this conversation here in Malta, because obviously we're small and we all know each other, which is one of the biggest problems we have. This problem of self-censorship. And the minute we understand that it is not to our benefit to just shut up and instead stop talking in forums like this, which are, of course, they're beneficial, but we're talking to ourselves here. You know, we need to go out and make a noise out there and do something which is public. All right. Now, there are obviously, all of us have a role. I have a major role as as an editor of this organization, and I'm trying to bring about changes myself. I'm not saying we always get things right. Sometimes we screw up, and sometimes I'm angry at the mistakes we make ourselves. But what I try to do is weed out certain stereotypes, certain statements we make, which just reinforces these stereotypes. You know, I made it a point that we remove the term illegal immigrants unless they are illegal immigrants. You know, I made it a point in the last few years that we remove nationalities from headlines, because why does it always have to be the Libyan racist or the Syrian pickpocket? You know, we never say it's a Maltese pickpocket. So why are we identifying that it's a Syrian pickpocket? So, you know, we're trying to do our bit here, but ultimately, everybody needs to do their part. You know, Carla mentioned the police, I believe. You know, the lack of training in the police is shocking. You know, we call the army, and you're just thinking they talk in terms of floods and waves of migrants reaching our shores. That's when they bother talking to us, because most of the time they don't even bother talking to us. You know, you have politicians still talking in terms of migrations just to score political points. The word integration remains a dirty word. We need to be questioning our politicians. Why do you never make these kinds of statements? Why do you always talk in terms of what appeases the lowest common denominator? So it's everything from us avoiding the clickbait headlines just to draw the people in, to us speaking out when something is wrong, and governments have a major role to play. Governments have a major role in providing the right information to make sure that we are providing the accurate coverage of something, And when we end up not having access to basic information, this is when the danger starts in the media, because we tend to resort then to sources, to people who might not have the most reliable information. And that's when mistakes happen. And that's when we create stereotypes, sometimes without even our knowledge. So we all have an important role to play. And, it's about time. I go back to our first point, the minute we start confronting this hate, the more hope I see. But I'm not seeing much of it at the moment. And I would like to see some of us actually telling people to stop talking rubbish on social media and explaining why they're talking rubbish. Because you know what? Maybe if one of us says it, then there are how many of us? 14 here? Maybe we can get 12 of us to start changing the narrative, because that's the only way it's going to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Herman, for bringing that up. In fact, we try to make a move that is why we have our panels live streamed. So to avoid to talk among ourselves, have it recorded and posted within ourselves at our social media group. So, I mean, what I feel is very important, that panels like this or projects like this should be brought out and promoted also on mainstream media, and make little snippets and clippets and whatever, or little briefings. This would help us, because otherwise our work, Herman, remains just a tiny drop on a frying pan, on a very hot frying pan, and when one person speaks out, others should back up and not only watch the person who speaks out being crucified by a mob of people who are not only, being also haunted, like sort of, or pointed out that, you are the one sort of working for integration, or, what you're doing is evangelism, or whatever the hatred that comes to us doing our work. We need to build a very strong community and lobby group, just to answer this point of view. I leave it at there, but without a further ado, I would like to proceed, give Church Singh a little bit of, I want to like to hear your thoughts on what solutions would you propose, Church. I know you're doing very good work over the year, almost over a lifetime in Wales, in the Welsh government. Can you share from your experience, and what solutions would you propose? Even Malta might be able to take on board.
Yes, thank you very much, Maria. I go back to what Herman said at the outset, whose interest we are protecting. Who is the public? We need to be using the social media to spread the message to all the politicians across, in your own country and across the other countries, the necessity of overseeing the activities of social media. New Zealand has been successful in doing that. We need to, of course, make our children media literacy. But one of the things, when I go back to Herman's question, whose interest, who we are protecting? We are protecting the interests of young children who are being groomed, who are being radicalized, who are being encouraged to commit suicide. And that is the responsibility of the government of all countries, Malta included, to take steps to address those. And how would we address that? Well, regulated social media. All social media should be regulated so that they do not step outside what they're allowed to do. And overseeing would be one thing, but regulated would be another, which is more important, more effective in my view. And we have seen in different areas where if something is regulated, area is regulated, people follow. If they breach it, they are punished. And that, I think, Maria, is my way of thinking forward.
Thank you, Judge. Klaus-Peter, you are the last in the round. From your end, what solutions would you propose we could take up?
Yeah, it would be easy if I could just give a solution. Unfortunately, I have more a question. I quite often ask myself, why is it that so many people, especially young people, but also older people, have so much hatred in themselves that they go into the internet and just kill the other people in their words? What is the reason? And it's even from my background in Germany, and you, Gabriel, might know it. In Germany, I think it's even worse than here, that people are not so polite. Sometimes here, I think people are very polite to each other. In Germany, the speech of hatred is sometimes even much worse. Yeah, but what is the reason that so many people are obviously so unhappy with themselves that they do not feel accepted, yeah, and of course that they do not feel respected, and that it becomes so difficult to respect others. As I said, I don't really have a solution. Sometimes I'm very sad when I see, especially let's say I come to a playground where in earlier years just children played together. Nowadays they go home and sit with their smartphone. Yeah, that there is so little intercommunication and interaction. Yeah, that we try to find ways, and this is specifically a question also to the churches, and in Malta churches play a big role, to give platforms where people meet analog, which means physically, that they share with one another, as I mentioned earlier on, to share a meal, to play something together. Where do we still play, really play together, and so learn, yeah, to plant into them another attitude. I think that is for me very important. I mean, in the media formed what's going on in other cultures in Africa or Asia, so you can get the information. It's all there, yeah. But where do people tend to prefer going to? That in these discussions where they really kill each other and have the thumb down and things like that. Unfortunately, it's like that, and we must find ways to give a positive understanding to each other, that they do not feel neglected and that they are hated, and then of course they come with their hated speeches and so on. I think there's a big job to do in our modern society. I could go much deeper now, but I leave that. Who is my vis-a-vis, at least? How can we still think a way that my vis-a-vis, my partner, whoever he is or she is of the same value as I am? Yeah, our understanding is we are subjects in the center, and all around are objects, and we can just do I exaggerate now, we can just use them for our own purpose. purposes, and this is done in the media, and it can be done as I mentioned, and it was mentioned quite often, without heavy consequences.
Thank you, Klaus-Peter, for your input. What you are saying, if I understand you right, you propose promoting understanding through immersion,
Right.
through giving each other the opportunity to meet and to connect and to learn from each other. And in this way, we help eradicate wrong conceptions about when we engage in dialogue, if I hear you right. I mean, because throughout our debate here, there was this red thread with what you brought on the table, how important the interpersonal exchanges to eradicate preconceived notions we have about each other, or to give each, this is how maybe to understand how stereotypes are formed, which is one part of this project, SMITE. That is why the acronym of what is SMITE. I have heard somebody whispered something in my ear and I act on it without checking whether this is correct or not. Thank you for all your very valid inputs. I would like to open the floor to our attendants. If there are any questions to our honorable panelists, please bring them forward either in chat or personally. We have a couple of minutes to do that. Levi, would you conduct that, please, for me?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think we have been given some great insight, and I really like how I'll go to Herman. So let me comment on that, how you were hard on that. I think your blatant honesty on the aspect of our solutions, I think it's something I wouldn't want to really, I had to use the clause of being an African, but or a migrant or a third world national, as they call us, third world nationals, that we are going through some things, and the social media also gives some statements and words that really hit on us hardly. But there was a question that was posed by Mina, I think she's no longer here, but it says, who is going to regulate the media literacy? I think we've spoken about the solution, the consequences, and all those things on the ethical aspect of it. But can anybody give, or let me say, Herman, can I ask you in particular, if you can give your own perspective of who you think is going to help in regulating the media literacy in let's say, Malta? I'm asking you this because I think you have a reputable system with the media, let's say Times of Malta, which is something I always read every minute, every second during my day to get information. So if Times of Malta can give us an insight on how regulating who can, or what means it could be used to regulate media literacy in the country or in Malta or in the media space, please.
I would like to think, I partially answered this question earlier. I said, like, no, it needs educators who really believe in basic respect. I mean, this is all we're talking about here. I'd like to hear media professionals. The problem is, who do you put as media professionals? Because let's be brutally honest, our state broadcaster is one of the biggest problems in this country. What the issues I was talking about earlier about nationalities and headlines and about stereotypes, open the 8 o'clock news tonight and see what's going to be mentioned. That is one of the biggest problems we have in this country. And this is the state broadcaster that most Maltese people follow. So there's my answer to you. I would like to see NGOs, people like you guys who are doing, a good service here to the community, but it needs to be more proactive. So, it's a number of people, but I would not like to see politicians whose priorities are to feed populism rather than understand that integration is here to stay. And we need to be able to benefit from it as a society rather than dealing with it as though it's a disease. So that's my answer to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I like when you say that it's like a disease, because I think in one way or the other, it is very, very infectious, and I'll use contagious as well, because it's a global sphere where people go in there. I think if there's a good strategy, like you said, educating people to cure that disease, look for a means to eradicate that mindset, that thought pattern of people around the world, and the media in particular, which is and a very great thing. Thank you very much for that. Anybody wants to add anything on that aspect again, on regulating the media? Anyone, even the panelists or anyone attending, if you have any contribution for that? If not, then we are going to open the floor for any other questions. Anyone with any other questions that you think we could answer that, or the panelists would give some solutions or answers to your questions, please.
Okay, thank you. I raised my hand earlier on. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Sorry, I'm quickly going to make a point when Mr. Hammond was talking about the last, not this one, the one before this last, about the solution. What do we think, how we can find solution to this social media ulabalu of the thing? And then he said, he mentioned that sometimes, I mean, it has to go beyond this meeting that we are having here. We have to go out there, and we have to make the people aware, especially the people in power. You know, one thing I see, what I'm trying to add to that is, especially in the UK, I mean, because I have families and I do follow up a lot with the UK, and even in America, whereby you have lots of, I'm going to say at this point in time, Africans, mostly Africans. And what I think we are lacking in Malta is this kind of trying to bring the migrant together with the system, imbibe them in the system. What do I mean by that? We have to start employing migrants, because we do understand that a lot of migrants are very, very knowledgeable. They are brilliant. They have their own qualifications coming from way back where they're coming from. What I noticed that a lot of migrants are just being limited working with NGOs, non-governmental organizations, whereby it's free. For example, I'm going to make ourselves as an example. I'm working with African media. So if I'm going to talk, if I'm going to bring out my speech, I want to be like, I'm there. Just me alone. What can I do? So if Mr. Aman is going out there, he's trying to help people he's giving out the education. I think mostly the politicians will see the effect of it when you have more of those people that have been affected. Because sometimes they look at Dr. Carla, is she not Maltese? What is she trying to say? Because she's just the only one. She's white, she's Maltese. Or they look at Mr. Harman, he's the only one. But when you have a lot of people, what do I mean by a lot of people? At least, even if you're going to campaign, if you're going to go out there, you have at least 10% of those campaigners or those people working in those offices to be those migrants. It speaks a lot. Let me make myself as an example. I'm a manager. I'm a nursing manager. Do you want to believe that I am the only nursing manager in the whole Malta? And I'm going to shock you with that. I am the only nursing manager in the whole Malta. What do I mean by that? Because I am the only one that. So how do you want me to speak out alone? I do speak out because I'm somebody that has a very, very strong voice. I fight for it. But let's say I have other migrants, whereby I have like other 4. I'm not even talking about Africans now. Maybe other people that are foreigners. You have other 4 or 5 people with me that are always coming on board with me. Then we can speak out. But do you know what to do? Because I am the only migrant. I am the only one that in the whole healthcare Malta, the health system, the nursing, the hospitals in Malta, I am the only one that has been able to get to the top managerial post, and I'm the only one being used. So I will end up ignoring every invitation. I don't know if I'm making myself clear here, because I'm exhausted. I don't want to be the only one. But unfortunately, people are not being admitted. Inclusion, that is the word I'm looking for. People need to be included. For example, Aditus is doing great. They are doing excellently well. They can have 1 or 2 migrants that are working with them, even as part-timers. You know, maybe Mr. Harman is a published, I don't know. I'm just trying to bring example here. Maybe you have 1 or 2 or 3 people. I don't know if you guys are doing it, but this is what I'm just trying to, so that when you are speaking, when Carla is seated, you have another face. Maybe she's a Bulgarian, maybe she's a Somalian, maybe she's a South African. They are there. They are bringing up, because these are the people that are most affected by this social media negativity, because you guys are speaking, it's true, but we need these people to be out there, but we don't really have them there. And we all know that everything in Malta is being politicized. Even though we know people have to be trained, when you bring it up to the politicians, they always want to sweep them under the carpet, because I work for my party gained from me, and I wouldn't want to hurt people that are going to vote for us. So I think just my point of all this I'm saying is we need an inclusion. The migrants needs to be in the top places. Maybe they need to be trained. I don't know how that is going to be done. I have a lot of people, especially from Nigeria, that are IT guys, IT literate. They have PhDs, they are master holders. But anytime they apply for jobs, just looking at them, the color, they are not being employed. And I know what I'm saying. So I think this is where we want to start from. When you see people in the cabinet in the UK, when you see people, speaking in even let's start from the local government, the local council, you see people that are of other colors, people that are of other nationalities, they are speaking out, and the people can hear them. They're like, oh, really? We know what he or she is feeling like, because he or she is part of it. So that's what I'm just planning to bring on board as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Davy. I think I'll bring this up. We had a roundtable sitting a few weeks ago with some high-end stakeholders. I think from the Ministry of Education, we have some NGOs, we have the CEO of Taxation. We had quite a few reputable people in the media sector as well. We're all represented in that stakeholder meeting. Ministry of Education was represented. And I was writing the summary of that session a few days ago, and I came to realize that we spoke quite a lot of the things you just spoke about, being inclusion and integration. You know, sometimes we want people to be included in the society, and sometimes we fail to understand that even being included in the society, there's part of integration. I think there should be a availability of integration. Can we integrate people into the society? Can we integrate people into the social media sphere or the media sphere of the country? Let's say even on the TV space, on the radio space, let's say even on the educational sector. Like you said, I'm fortunately to be one of the people, or one of the Africans or Blacks that are working in a high-end situation or high-end position, which I'm blessed to be in that position. But there are many other people who do have such opportunities, and we are trying to create an awareness for the government to see that there are people we could do better. And now we are saying that we're talking about the stereotype story and the stereotype mindset. The media section, there is no one that can represent the voices of those who are suffering of the same situation. Migrants are the ones suffering. Nobody hears their voice in the media. Nobody hears their voices in the radio or on the TV. So I think on that roundtable session, we're publishing that soon. More was spoken onto that. So I think Ferija, I saw you posted something on there. Please, do you have anything to say? Just so I followed to your comment on
yes, if you have to take into context, when during the peak of the pandemic, when a health sector or even just a common individual was about to post something, immediately Facebook flagged that this is going to be like COVID related information. So why hasn't been so far? I mean, COVID has been with us for 2-3 years. I mean, homophobic slurs, racial comments, hate speech has been with us for longer than COVID. So why has it been so far? Social media has introduced this, like if someone's about either comment or also post or even share something which is so insensitive, it should be flagged immediately. I know TikTok for sure does flag certain videos like, listen, be aware that from before, this have some sensitive content. I think Facebook and Instagram, which they have quite a large audience as well, should implement such idea as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think that's true. I think, like we said about regulating the system or the media, like we spoke, the first thing that Herman spoke about, I think there should be some I think if you're working in the media sphere, there should be some possibilities that, let's say, the security system of a country, likewise the welfare system of the country, can enable flagging, flag out the wrong words or videos that are speaking the things that are not portraying the right character of a nation or of a country. So I think those are systems that needs to be implemented or added into. Thank you very much for that. I think I'll also give the chance to Roy. I hope I'm not pronouncing the name right. I think you post the question on the chats. Please, can you speak on that, please? Sibina Roy or Sibini Roy. Sibani Roy, sorry.
Hello. Well, it is very interesting and intriguing presentation. Thanks to Maria and thanks to all the panelists. I think all the panelists has answered my question already, bit by bit and pieces by pieces. So to collectively, I would like to ask all the panelists, and including the chair, also Maria, would all the panel members, today's panel members, collectively come up with an idea or action plan for the future, near future, collectively. We heard all individual panelists giving their idea of solutions. What about collectively coming up with an idea?
Thank you, Dr. Shibani. You mentioned in your chat about proposing a joint statement or together. You know, this is actually a very, very good idea to actually something to publish to collectively to create a joint statement for this panel and for this action. So this way, Herman, would be a solution to break out the bubble, you know, where we don't have to reproduce a panel, but we have, for example, a joint statements coming out.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that, Maria. So we are fastly running out of time, so we can give some few minutes for everyone to prepare. I think some of us are working and we have other things we are doing, so we are just stealing some time to join the session. Do we have any questions again or any last minute contribution for us before we call it a day?
I would suggest that the panelists have a last comment, a concluding comment, so that we can call it a day with a concluding comment, maybe also picking up the last suggestion.
I can just reinforce my last comment, Gabby. It's, you know, I admire the work of NGOs. I think they are doing amazing work. It would be desperate without organizations such as yours. I've been in the business working for too long, so you become a bit cynical about everything and everybody.
Sure.
But sometimes some of the biggest solutions don't come through reports or long discussions. They come through very simple actions, as promoting the virtues, the basics of common decency, of values, of actually speaking out when something is wrong. That doesn't need to come with hours of meetings and drawing up reports which nobody will ever read. Sometimes it's just a matter of us speaking out publicly. And I say this knowing that I have a big problem here in my own country, where the Maltese especially is the ones who have nothing sensible to say are normally the ones who are shouting the loudest. And the sensible ones are just there saying they've given up, they can't speak up, which frustrates me tremendously. And this is, something we really need to do something about, and again, on this panel, I'm in a minority, along with Kurt and Carla,
There is a lot of silencing around. We had invited so many of your colleagues, even the Institute. You think we had received a reply?
Nothing, yeah.
So that was a bit frustrating for us, because we are dealing with a topic that should concern the mainstream media, and to take on responsibility from their end as well. So, but I mean, a statement doesn't need to use up a page. not even a half a page. A powerful sentence coined together could make a wonderful statement. So, and part what you just said, actions speak louder than words, and to break the shackle of silencing, because silencing is very powerful here.
Yeah, so that's right, Gabi. Thank you. So any other panelists have any conclusion?
Yes, if I may just say, Maria, first of all, I don't know why it's echoing. All the hard work you're doing to bring about people from all walks of life together is an excellent work. I wish the government will start listening and start thinking about citizens of Malta and not migrants or immigrants, because listening to Debbie, the commitment she has to the people of Malta, and she no doubt feels in and out, being a Maltese, that it is important that that is addressed. And I think the work which Dr. Sibani has started here in Wales and is spreading now across the world, because as you know, we have meetings where people from Sri Lanka, Singapore, Japan, they're all linked up to discuss. So social media is one thing, but to bring people together through that, to promote and act, to put people to start thinking, make people to start thinking and take action is important. No point sitting on the fence. We have seen that so many times in so many walks of life. People say, well, I'm not racist. I don't discriminate against anybody, so I don't want to be involved. Well, that is not the attitude. Now, as I have said, in Wales is non-racist Wales, means everyone has to be non-racist, otherwise they're racist. So I do hope that your work in Malta will continue to enhance and in the work which Dr. Sibani started here in Wales. And we need to work together and spread across beyond Malta as you are doing it. And I wish you and all your colleagues well.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Judge Singh. Actually, it started at the University of Westminster in, a long time ago, many, many moons ago. And I never thought one day we would be like this here today. I would also augur Dr. Carla Camilleri for her tireless work and Aditus Foundation, bringing safeguarding the dignity of people and helping to defend them. So I have my highest respect of that. And speaking out in the media by writing articles, by releasing reports. This is tireless work. This is a very, very important work. Oh, thank you, Carla.
I just wanted to kind of, if I could, just from what I just wanted to take, something from what Debbie said. I think the fact that it should be migrants who should be speaking about racism and integration and the difficulties faced in Malta, and pushing the government to push forward migrants or Maltese of migrant backgrounds is extremely important. And I think that's what is so unique about African Media Association. I think it's an absolutely amazing NGO that kind of can change the landscape in a real meaningful fashion. Also, maybe I didn't really point it out, there is also kind of like a divide between media organizations. We're quite supported by the English-speaking media organizations, whereas the Maltese-speaking media organizations are a bit more difficult to get through. And we also find that in our work, it's very difficult to kind of get our message across to certain sections, you know, of the population. So that is also something to take into consideration when we're trying to kind of speak about the message. And just one last point, of course, you know, we could speak, as we're saying, and to ourselves, to each other, but you know, at the end of the day, we need a government that is open to changing things, and we should hold them accountable to that.
Absolutely. Yes, Carla, definitely. And I mean, it is very important that we NGOs, we work together. Like, for example, this project as a joint project is actually an example of multimodal, multi-ethnic, across boundaries, across functions, to carry out this project together from the different functions. We like to set an example with that, and I wish more NGOs would join, you know, and pull on one rope in one direction, and not in different ones. So this is another opportunity. And Debbie, thank you so much. As Carla said, I just can echo what Carla said.
Oh, sorry, can I quickly, sorry, I don't know if I can be permitted, just one question, and it goes to both Dr. Carla and Mr. Herman. Is that because I think that is the fear of migrants, to be precise. When I speak to them, they are not aware of any charges or any law that is against someone, any racial abuse or discrimination. So some people are ready to speak out, they are ready to march forward, they are ready to do things, but they are like, if I do this, if there is an attack against me, is there any law that can covers me for that? Would I be able to take the person into court of law? Because some people are so naive and they don't know these things. For example, in the UK, I know even at your place of work, you have to be careful of the kind of racial abuse and discriminations, because people can take you to law and you can pay huge amounts of fine against. So that's my question. Is there anything like that in Malta's law?
I can answer. Yes, hi Debbie. Yes, there are protections in law, so it would depend what the action was. So you have protection against hate speech, you have protection against discrimination, protection against harassment and bullying at work, for example, as well. And if it is something more serious, then you have the criminal code that can be used in order to kind of file a report against any form of kind of more serious harm, which is not, could be have a racial bias or not, it would depend. So there
Okay.
are, obviously, there's also, they would have the rights to legal aid, and they also can contact us.
Okay, all right.
Very question.
Okay, yeah, because that's the main problem. Some people, they are just being quiet because they don't know if there is someone to fight for them, just in case they want to go out there. So.
No, and I understand the fear as well. Many of our clients fear kind of the repercussions as well on their permit, so that whether it could have a repercussion on their permit or their employment status and not more long term.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's understandable.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, is there any other closing statement from the panelists you would like to bring forward before we close?
Sorry, can I just say, add something, referring to that what Herman said, and he just appealed to the NGOs, but for me it's still not with enough flesh. Yeah, what does it really mean? Yeah, will there be a platform, or how can this be done? So I think it's a bit vague when we just say, I mean, I agree with it, that the NGOs and so should play a big role. And I think the church, even with the Catholic Church in Malta, we had, for example, at the other TTT meeting, we had Anton, for example, yeah, people like them, I think they would also support it. But we must find a way where people really have a platform. Yeah, when we say the NGOs, that is too much in general, yeah, and nobody feels obviously then directly addressed to lead that or to start that. I think that's an important thing for me.
Thank you for that food for thought. With this said, I would like to thank our panelists. I will would like to thank each of you personally for your very valuable input. And I would like to also thank to our live attendants. And also I would like to thank those who attended on social media and who, because they had no time, or that I know the viewing is not small either. So I would like to close this session today, and hopefully we see each other in person during our Story Cafe or our educational interactive events and our debates. And please feel free to comment on our Facebook page, on our project page. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from you and seeing more from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you and bye.
Thank you. Bye.